I was reborn. Reborn to the moment when I just discovered that my husband was having an affair. I saw the message on my phone that I was originally about to send, "Let's get a divorce." I sneered. And without a word, I deleted it. Then I changed it to a tender and affectionate reminder, "Honey, I made your favorite braised shrimp in soy sauce today. When will you be back?" Life is unpredictable. It only took 5 short years for a loving husband to turn cold. Aden and I were college classmates. He fell in love with me at first sight and pursued me for a long time before he became my boyfriend. Not long after graduation, we naturally got our marriage certificates under the witness and blessing of our relatives and friends. In the second year of our marriage, before my in-laws could even urge us to have a baby, I got pregnant. After 10 months of pregnancy, I gave birth to a son. All the way through, we had no marital discord, no conflicts between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, and no prenatal anxiety. Whether before or after marriage, we were always as affectionate as honey mixed with oil. He fulfilled the promise he made to me with his actions, and always treated me like a precious treasure, taking good care of me. At the same time, Aden's career has been developing steadily. In just a few years, he became the youngest senior executive in his company. I, in turn, naturally stepped back and returned to the family, making it my top priority to accompany my son to grow up happily, with a wealthy life, loving husband and wife, and a smart son. My best friend envied me, saying that I must have the script of the female protagonist in a sweet love story. We also became the model of a love story that went from school uniforms to wedding dresses in our social circle. Therefore, I never expected that the plot of husband having an affair would happen to me. If everyone's life is like a play, and I should be acting in a sweet love drama, so why did the style suddenly change while it was so sweet? To be honest, discovering his affair was really a coincidence. That weekend, the temperature was pleasant and the sun was shining brightly, which was a rare good weather recently. While I was playing with my son in the amusement park, I thought of Aden's aggrieved face when he reluctantly got up and went to the company to work overtime in the morning. I decided to order him a cup of milk tea on the food delivery app to comfort him. I screamed black tea, with cheese foam, 50 sweetness, and less ice. This is the only flavor he likes. The milk tea is delicious, but it has one drawback. Once it's left for too long and the ice cream completely melts, the originally right sweetness will turn into an unbearably sweet taste for Aden. So, to avoid the coincidence that he happened to go downstairs to inspect the store when the milk tea was delivered, I thoughtfully opened the WeChat of his assistant and decided to confirm his whereabouts in advance. As soon as I entered the chat interface, a child who suddenly ran past bumped into my elbow. My hand shook, and I accidentally clicked on the profile picture of Aden's assistant. Unexpectedly, the latest WeChat Moments photo of hers was also of the milk tea from this store. I subconsciously clicked on this moment post that was published 2 minutes ago. In the picture, 2 cups of milk tea were clinking together. One hand holding the milk tea was fair and small, obviously a girl's hand, and the other hand had distinct knuckles. And there was a wedding ring on the ring finger that was exactly the same as the one on my hand. The caption was, "The first cup of milk tea in autumn is so delicious." At that moment, I felt cold all over. But my head was boiling with blood, and it felt like my head was about to explode. Suddenly, having fulfilled my absai, a reply appeared, "Sister Lily, what you're drinking isn't milk tea at all. It's clearly dog food." After a while, this WeChat Moments post was suddenly deleted. I was in a trance, and a thought suddenly flashed through my messy mind. Oh, it seems she forgot to set groups for this moment's post. No wonder. Two people with families dared to show off their affection so brazenly. Speaking of which, today was originally the day when, after holding it in for a month in my previous life, I finally officially proposed a divorce. When I first discovered it, I really couldn't believe it. How could a husband who usually seemed to love me so much have an affair? Not to mention that he calmly kept his mistress by his side. Even a rabbit doesn't eat the grass by its own burrow, right? At first, I subconsciously made excuses for him. Isn't it normal for a boss to treat his subordinate to a cup of milk tea? But the image of the two of them snuggling up together kept lingering in my mind. I thought again, did I misunderstand? Was he set up by someone? Maybe those cheesy and vulgar plotlines from TV dramas happened to him? But as a primary school student once said, after eliminating all the impossibilities, the remaining one, no matter how incredible it may seem, is the truth. I was just like every woman in the world who unfortunately discovered her husband's infidelity. I both wanted to know the truth and was afraid of knowing it. However, after discovering more and more clues about their affair, I finally no longer needed to deceive myself. During that month, I really thought a lot. Where did it go wrong? Was there something I wasn't good enough at? Was it just physical infidelity, or did he also fall in love with someone else emotionally? Was it a momentary lapse in judgment, or had he already changed his heart? If he promised not to do it again, should I forgive him? In fact, I did consider forgiving him. After all, judging by his usual appearance as a model husband, he was probably just confused for a moment. I could have a good talk with him. As long as he was willing to come back, we could still have a happy and harmonious family. Right? But I couldn't sleep at night. I tossed and turned in bed. Every day, every day. It took all my strength just to control myself from suddenly bursting into tears. When he called me and said he had a business dinner and would be back late, I couldn't help but have those dark speculations. In the end, I still decided to let go. I couldn't guarantee that he would never be unfaithful again. But at least I could decide not to become a hysterical, resentful woman. They say that a man's infidelity is either 0 times or countless times. I think that by not allowing us to become hideous in a long-term tug-of-war, we can at least preserve some dignity for our past beauty. I think that since I can't tolerate a grain of sand in my eyes, I won't tolerate it. It's a rational decision not to continue investing because of the sunk cost. I think, is it worth losing a beloved wife and a young son, and a once happy and harmonious family just for a moment of pleasure? I will leave like this and make you, again, what out a lull sigh, miserable and regret it for the rest of your life. I think, after being reborn, I just want to give myself 2 hard slaps for the self who thought she was so sober back then, just because others casually praised your perfect match and your love fairy tale. Did you really think you were acting in an idol drama? Only the female protagonist in an idol drama can stage the plot of chasing the wife and suffering, and getting back together after a breakup. Only the female protagonist in an idol drama ever has to worry about daily necessities like firewood, rice, oil, and salt, after they dump their scumbag ex-husbands. Either there is a second male lead who has been waiting for years, and is overjoyed to finally get a chance, or they will encounter a handsome and wealthy social elite who definitely doesn't care that they are divorced and have a child. And I, except for a little money-consuming beast, my son for whose custody I will fight firmly, have nothing. So, I will get a divorce. But not in this way. Since I've been reborn, even if my IQ doesn't increase, I should at least gain some experience. In a marriage, the one who wades their sleeves and leaves without taking a single cloud is not a poet, but a complete fool. I deleted the words, "let's get a divorce," that I had already typed on my phone and only needed to send. Then I changed it to a tender and affectionate reminder. "Honey, I made your favorite braised shrimp and soy sauce today. When will you be back?" Of course, I didn't make that darn braised shrimp and soy sauce today. Which woman who has just made up her mind to divorce her husband still has the mood to cook for him? I said that just because I knew he couldn't come back at all now. Sure enough, soon the unique ringtone of Aiden's call rang. I walked to the kitchen unhurriedly, turned on the range hood and the faucet, and pretended to be busily preparing dinner before answering the phone. "Honey, what time will you be home? The food will be ready soon." Aiden's gentle voice came from the other end of the phone. "Haven't you been saying that you haven't been in the mood to cook recently? Why are you suddenly so interested today?" I coquettously said, "Of course I can't bear to see you eating takeout every day." Hearing my relaxed tone and no longer being listless like I had been recently, Aiden's tone carried a hint of joy. But then it showed some embarrassment. "I haven't eaten the braised shrimp and soy sauce cooked by my wife for a long time. I really want to eat it. But a big client came today, and we're still chatting. I guess I have to accompany him for dinner tonight." After getting the expected answer, I showed a look of grievance but still remained considerate. Okay. It's rare that I'm in a good mood today. But it's a pity you don't have the luck to enjoy it. Then I'll have to enjoy the delicious meal alone. Be careful tonight. Don't drink too much. Doctor carefully. And come back early. He really did have a client today. But the client had something urgent to attend to. And the originally prepared business dinner turned into a candlelit dinner for him and his assistant, Lily. The reason why I know this so clearly is, of course, because in my previous life, after he received my message about getting a divorce, he rushed back in a hurry. And he didn't even have time to wipe off the half lipstick mark on his collar. I originally thought that I could leave calmly. But the determination I had made collapsed unexpectedly because of that lipstick mark. Were they really in such a hurry to be together that they couldn't even wait for a little while? I had a fierce quarrel with him. And we both said a lot of harsh words. In the end, we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get a divorce certificate early the next day. I naively thought that after he calmed down, he would definitely regret and blame himself and wake up to his mistakes. He would definitely try his best to beg me to get back together. After all, we had such a wonderful past. After waiting for a year, I finally received the news of Aiden's remarriage. After hanging up the phone, I was in a rather good mood and ordered myself a Boston lobster that I hadn't been willing to eat for a long time. While waiting for the food delivery, I also bought 2 miniature cameras online, planning to install one in the living room and one on the balcony. A child of 3 or 4 years old is at an active age, and it's impossible for me to keep an eye on him 24 hours a day. Installing surveillance cameras in the areas where the child often moves around is really a normal arrangement. Aiden came back before 10 o'clock in the evening, and there was still a bit of alcohol on his body. I pretended to be surprised. Weren't you supposed to accompany the big client? Why are you back so early today? Aiden hugged me and showed off. Honey, after you called me, I didn't have the mood to socialize anymore. I finally managed to deal with the client, and I came back as soon as possible. I didn't say anything. It wasn't that I didn't want to, but I was disgusted by his embrace. I'm sorry. It's my first day being reborn, and I'm still very unfamiliar with this business. I haven't fully prepared myself mentally yet. Aiden looked at me expectantly, since our son is at his grandpa's house today. How about we? Tonight? With the unspoken ambiguous hint in his words. His hand had already slowly rested on my shoulder. He had the energy to come home and try to have sex with his wife after having a meal with his mistress. No wonder in my previous life I could never figure out when they started having an affair. I slapped his hand away and said coquettously, "Stop talking nonsense. Go take a shower first. I have something important to talk to you about today." When I saw Aiden coming out after taking a shower, I walked up to him. Our son has been throwing a tantrum at me these past few days. He said he wants to go to Disneyland. I used to think he was too young, so I never took him anywhere. Now that he's already 4 years old, and since the weather hasn't turned cold yet, I was thinking of taking him there so he can have a great time. What do you think? A look of hesitation appeared on Aiden's face. Honey, you know that the end of the year is our busiest time. I gave him a sidelong glance. I know you're busy. I'll take our son there by myself. Okay? But you have to help us mother and son make some plans. Let's figure out how to arrange our itinerary. I pulled Aiden to sit down, and then I started chatting with him animatedly, switching between different scenic spots, hotels, and travel packages on various travel apps. However, he obviously had little interest in a trip that he couldn't go on. At first, he could manage to nod or shake his head in response. But later, his head gradually drooped, and he started snoring. I helped him lie down. After his breathing gradually became steady, I tentatively called his name twice. Seeing that he didn't respond, I picked up his phone and unlocked it. Ironically, his phone password has always been my birthday. Only a woman who loves a man would be curious about every detail of his infidelity. But my love was already worn away in my previous life. Now, I'm known as Nyokulu's Celine, the one who collects evidence and seeks revenge. So after unlocking his phone, I quickly went through their chat records with the sole purpose of searching for evidence. Unfortunately, Their chat records seemed very innocent. Most of the conversations were about work, and each conversation was quite brief. There were hardly any traces of ambiguity. And I thought about it, and it was actually quite normal. After all, these two people spent 8 hours together every day. They had plenty of time to talk. So why would they leave evidence behind and take the unnecessary risk? Since I couldn't find any useful information from the chat records, I had an idea and clicked on Lily's WeChat moments. Wow! This time I really hit the jackpot. The content here was much richer, and what I could see on my own account, I guessed that there were quite a few posts that were only visible to him. For almost every one of these moments boasts that I couldn't see. Aden had either liked or left a comment. Even the moments boast that made me discover their mutual infidelity during their marriages was still there in her moments. Untouched. The only difference was that there were no likes or comments from other people. And Aden's reply was lying there suggestively, yeah, it's really sweet. They couldn't resist showing their affection secretly. Yet they couldn't expose it openly. It's so difficult. While clicking my tongue in amazement, I quickly took pictures with my own phone. Another day of seizing evidence. Oops. Let out a lull sigh. Being moved by this beautiful love. But this was just an added bonus. The real gain was the transfer records in Aden's, WeChat and Alipay. At first, the transfers were only made once every few months. But later they became more and more frequent. Over a period of more than 2 years. The red envelopes and transfers that Aden sent to Lily in various names during festivals and holidays added up to about over 100 yuan. The sweet words that he didn't dare to say in WeChat were said without end in the transfer remarks and responses. This is really great. I quickly took screenshots of these transfer records one by one, forwarded them, and saved them as evidence. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilledly, with these mushy words, it would have been really difficult to determine the nature of these transfers otherwise. Afraid that Aden would wake up, I didn't dare to delay for too long. After hurriedly finishing everything, I deleted all the traces and put his phone back in its original place. Thinking of myself in my previous life who got divorced in a muddle, I couldn't help but laugh at myself mockingly. It doesn't matter. It's actually quite good to avenge the grudges at 2 lifetimes together. Wait. Does that mean I was cheated on by that bastard Aden for 2 lifetimes? I can't think about this too carefully. I quickly cursed and applied a sleeping mask before going to bed. Honey. Where are you now? On the other end of the phone, Aden was obviously a bit restless. I can understand. Anyone who suddenly receives a bank-text message saying that more than 30 yuan has been spent on their credit card would be worried. I'm at the airport with our son now. Our first stop is going to be Shanghai. We'll first accompany our son to Disneyland, which he really wants to go to. I replied gently. Aden was obviously surprised. Why is it so sudden? Why didn't you tell me? I said shyly, it's too troublesome to make the travel plan by myself. Since I'm traveling with the child alone, for the sake of safety, I thought it would be better to join a small tour group. I didn't expect them to be so persuasive. I was in a daze and signed up for a 28-day luxurious parent-child tour of Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai. I only realized that the departure time was today after I paid the money. I was in such a hurry to pack my luggage that I didn't have time to say anything. Besides, you had a meeting today, so I didn't want to disturb you. Seeing that Aden didn't say anything for a while, I called out a few times, honey? Why aren't you saying anything? Aden couldn't help but complain. All our family savings are with you. Why did you suddenly decide to use the credit card? I thought it was being fraudulently used. Perhaps feeling that his tone was too harsh. He added, the main thing is that we still have to worry about repaying the debt. It's really troublesome. There was a hint of apology in my tone. The bank financial product I bought a while ago hasn't matured yet, and the remaining household expenses weren't enough to pay for the tour group. I thought that you would soon receive your quarterly bonus, and you could just pay it back then. It's better to keep the cash on hand for emergencies. Aden was at a loss for words, so he just quickly reminded me to pay attention to safety and then hung up the phone. Mom, I want to eat a strawberry cake. Our son leaned against the window of the cake shop at the airport and pointed at the exquisite Peppa Pig cake with great excitement and shouted, I walked over and smiled. Okay. If you want to eat it, we'll buy it. But you're not allowed to waste it. Okay? In my previous life, when I found out about Aiden's infidelity, my heart was broken. I once thought that those sleepless nights filled with heart-wrenching pain were the most extreme pain I could experience in this life. Back then, I took the initiative to ask for a divorce. Just wanting to punish this man who said he loved me but couldn't control his body by leaving him. I didn't ask him for a single penny. But now that I think about it, losing the one you love is the real punishment. To Aiden, I probably was just a woman who had shared his hardships at most. It would already be considered him being affectionate if he shed a few tears. So, life gave me a hard slap in the face. My salary was only enough for the daily food, clothing, and other expenses of my son and me. Even part of the tuition fees and insurance premiums could only be covered by relying on my parents' support. When other children were learning the piano, painting, or dancing, I had to hesitate for a long time before buying a piece of clothing for my son that cost more than 100 yuan. When other children were skiing in Japan or vacationing in Sonya, I couldn't even bear to take my son to an amusement park. Strawberries, cherries, durians. I never dared to buy these relatively expensive fruits again, for fear of facing my parents' occasional accusations of being wasteful and not knowing how to manage the household. In fact, I know that they were just talking. In reality, they had already been doing their best to help me. I have no right to blame anyone. If I have to blame someone, it can only be myself for being so stupid. Fortunately, having fulfilled what I accept, God gave me a chance to dry out the water in my head. 28 days passed in the blink of an eye. It feels so good to not have to think about anything and just have a great time. Thinking that the expenses for this vacation were all paid for by Aiden, it feels even better. Aiden should also feel good, right? After all, from the surveillance footage, he secretly brought Lily home several times to have a happy time together. The two of them not only did a lot of inappropriate things under a large wedding photo, but they even had a serious discussion. Lily, I didn't expect your wife to look quite pretty with makeup on. Aiden blurted out, after she gave birth to the child. She didn't pay attention to her appearance at all. I've almost forgotten what she used to look like. Lily said jealously, don't you always praise your wife for being gentle and virtuous? Men just like to have their cake and eat it too. Aiden teased. Why are you being so jealous? A woman like you who can walk side by side with men is more attractive. Lily pouted and said, then tell me. If you had met us at the same time back then, who would you have married? Aiden leaned in, you're just saying that casually. If you really want to know, why don't you try getting a divorce? In my previous life, I was a deserter in my marriage. I didn't even have the courage to look into it carefully. So naturally, I never had the chance to see his disgusting face like this. I have to thank those two miniature cameras. Only then could I appreciate their touching love story. Before, I only knew that Lily was the assistant that Aiden personally recruited. But I didn't know that the mutual admiration between the two of them gradually changed its nature during their daily interactions. A beautiful woman who was usually calm, capable, confident, and charismatic, but only adored him. Let's just ask, who could resist being attracted to that? Anyway, honey fulfilled my obsession. Aiden couldn't resist, taking advantage of being drunk once. The two of them semi-consciously ended up in bed together. What a pity. If I had been there, I would definitely have applauded and cheered for this love that was well matched, and a case of it's a pity we met too late. Now I can only sort out all the evidence with tears in my eyes. And then spend a lot of money hiring a lawyer to ensure that I can maximize my own interests. As soon as the plane landed, I called Aiden, we're back. Come home early today. I have something to talk to you about. When I got home, a moving company that I had made an appointment with in advance was already waiting for me at the door. Expensive things have their reasons. This moving company, which claims that you don't have to do anything yourself, was indeed professional, worry-free, and efficient. In just one day, they moved all the furniture cleanly. I even had time to send my son to my parents' house, and then went to get a manicure and put on an exquisite makeup. Didn't he say that he had almost forgotten what I used to look like? This will help him remember. There's no way. I'm just too kind-hearted. No wonder I was lucky enough to be reborn. Before long, I heard the sound of the key inserting into the door lock. Aden shouted, "Honey, I'm home," as he opened the door and walked in. Before he could be amazed by my appearance for too long, he saw the empty living room. I didn't beat around the bush, Aden. Let's get a divorce. Aden was taken aback for a moment and looked at me in disbelief. Honey? What are you talking about? Is it because I didn't pick you up at the airport? I've really been exhausted recently. Can't you be more understanding of me? I sneered. Is it because you're too tired from work? Or is it because you're busy with work and also having a romantic time with Lily? So you're too tired? Aden is a smart man. Instead of simply denying it, he immediately hugged me and defended himself. Honey, listen to me. It was just an accident between me and her. It was all because of that company party. I drank too much, and she sent me home. I mistook her for you and then I was wrong. But you're really the only one in my heart, honey. You have to believe me. I, of course, had an impression of that company party he mentioned. That party was originally to celebrate his project team winning a big order. But unexpectedly, my son suddenly had a high fever. I thoughtfully told him to enjoy the party and not to worry about home. So, in the middle of the night, I carried my son to the hospital for an emergency visit alone and busily handled the hospitalization procedures. Unexpectedly, when I was feeling tired and helpless by my son's hospital bed, my husband was having an affair with another woman in our home. I forcefully broke free from his embrace. Was it an accident once? And is it an accident every time? For the safety of our son, I bought surveillance cameras and installed them at home. But we went on a trip right after installing them, and I didn't have a chance to tell you about it. Aden's face turned pale, and he begged in a flurry, Honey, it's not like that. I really was just muddled for a moment. I have no feelings for her. I only love you. Please forgive me. Okay? I'll never do it again. I really swear. Looking at this man crying bitterly in front of me, looking as if he deeply regretted what he had done, my heart was surprisingly unmoved. Maybe when I proposed the divorce in my last life, I wanted to see this scene. Now, I already know that this man's guilt is worthless. It's better to talk about something more practical. I said word by word, Aden, I want to divorce you. In a few days, my lawyer will come to talk to you about the divorce agreement. After leaving these words, I turned around and left. The divorce process with Aden didn't go smoothly. When facing the lawyer, his attitude was very tough. He threatened that we couldn't get a divorce and sarcastically said that the lawyer shouldn't try to break up a happy family just to earn some ill-gotten money. Even more surprisingly, he pushed his work aside early for the first time and waited outside the kindergarten with me to pick up our son after school. There were parents waiting to pick up their children all around, due to considerations of dignity and upbringing. It was impossible for me to have a big quarrel with him in public. He held our son in his arms, and I followed in silence all the way back to the door of the house that I had just moved out of a few days ago. Unexpectedly, instead of taking out the key to open the door, he rang the doorbell. As the door opened, a smell of food wafted out. Our son had already happily jumped down from his father's arms and rushed over. Grandma, I've missed you so much. Before I could think more, my mother-in-law pulled me in. Celine, come in and have dinner quickly. At the dinner table, my mother-in-law and Aden took turns chatting to liven up the atmosphere. With the innocent words of our son, who didn't know what was going on, everything seemed just like it used to be. After dinner, seeing that I hadn't said anything, my mother-in-law carefully brought up the topic. Celine, Aden told me about what happened between you two. He really was muddled in what he did. Aden nodded beside her, looking ashamed and ready to accept judgment. I sneered, since you know he did something muddled, and you should hurry up and sign the papers. My mother-in-law was taken aback and looked at me disapprovingly. It takes such a great deal of fate to become husband and wife in this lifetime. The child is already so old. How can you just get a divorce like that? When two people live together, it's inevitable that there will be some bumps and scrapes. Only by tolerating each other can they live a good life. Who dares to say that they will never make a mistake in their whole life? He really regrets it a lot and has promised me that he will break off with that woman outside immediately. Right? Seeing that my mother-in-law passed the conversation to him, Aden nodded repeatedly and expressed his determination to me. I'll apply to transfer her position in the next few days. I won't have any dealings with her anymore. Really? I asked the old lady. Was there a large crowd on the way when you came here this time? Our community is right next to the pedestrian street in the city center, which can be said to be the most prosperous area of the whole city. There's not a single day when there's no traffic jam when going out. My mother-in-law answered puzzled lie, yes. There were a lot of people. I put on a smile. Here. It's not easy to find a toad with 3 legs. But there are men with 2 legs all over the street. Why should I tolerate him? Would you still eat the food if it's gone bad? Isn't the fresh food in the pot more fragrant? You. I don't know if she was angry at my unceremonious attitude or didn't like me comparing her precious son to spoiled food. The old lady slapped the table and said coldly, I can't control whether you to get a divorce or not. But I only have this one grandson. And I don't agree with you taking him away. So she came to fight for the custody of the child. In my last life, I quickly left the house with nothing but the child, and Aden never raised any objection to the custody of the child from beginning to end. Although my mother-in-law always called the grandson dear and seemed to dote on him to the extreme whenever she saw him, she only came to see the child twice in total after the divorce. After Aden's newly married wife got pregnant, she didn't even call anymore. It was precisely because of this that since I was reborn, I had never even considered the problem of what to do if Aden fought me for the custody of the child. A father who holds a high position in a listed company and has a substantial income. A mother who has always been a full-time housewife and has no income. A child who still doesn't understand what his parents' divorce means. Without consulting a lawyer, I could already imagine that if we went to court, my chance of winning the case would be extremely low. Seeing my expression suddenly freeze, Aden looked at me sincerely. Celine, since we brought the child into this world, we have the responsibility to let him live a good life. Stop making a fuss. Okay? At this moment, a sentence that I don't know when I saw flashed through my mind. When getting a divorce, a mother wants the child truly for the child. A father wants the child to make the mother give up the property. But if I were to be reborn and get the money but lose the child, what would be the meaning of my rebirth? I straightened up and said the most cowardly words with the toughest attitude. Let me think about it. I thought about it for almost half a month. Maybe he expected that I couldn't bear to part with the child, and that I would either have to give up the property and go through a divorce by agreement or give up the idea of getting a divorce. During these half a month, apart from sending me some messages to show his concern from time to time, Aden really didn't push me too much. Until half a month later, my lawyer approached Aden again. Aden pretended to be pained and shook his head. You lawyers don't always encourage people to file a lawsuit just to earn that consultation fee. If you could have made her understand the pros and cons clearly, we wouldn't have come to this. My client, Ms. Fu, having fulfilled my obsession, asked me to convey a message to you. My lawyer said politely. She has thought it through and thinks it's better to get a divorce. Aden sneered sarcastically. And have you asked your client how an unemployed person is going to support herself and the child alone? Your consultation fee is not low either. Right? Can she afford it? The lawyer slowly pulled out a false smile. Aden, how can you call a woman with a legal job an unemployed person? Be careful that my client sues you for slander. That's right. My parent had just taken over a convenience store and hired me as the store manager. So I successfully got a job with both obvious advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage was that the salary was not high. Only 5,000 due on a month. The advantage was that I had a close relationship with the boss. Like a family. And there was never a risk of losing my job. Aden's face turned livid as he flipped through my labor contract and realized that it was no longer realistic to control me by using the custody of the child. My lawyer even thoughtfully gave him a piece of advice without charging a fee. According to Chinese law, as long as the woman has the ability to raise the child and is willing to have the custody of the child, the probability of winning the case in a divorce lawsuit is very high. Now that the real intention was revealed, Aden no longer tried to cover up the interests he really cared about with so-called family affection and love. His attitude changed from absolutely not agreeing to the divorce to absolutely not agreeing to this divorce agreement. As the main breadwinner of the family, he thought that the divorce plan that would make him almost leave the house with nothing was unreasonable. We currently have two houses. One is a small two-bedroom apartment in the city center where we are living now, and the other is a large flat in the suburbs. The large flat in the suburbs was the wedding house that our parents on both sides pulled money to buy when we just got married. Although it had a large space, it was very far from his company. So after getting married, I silently saved up all the household expenses he gave me and paid the down payment for this small two-bedroom apartment in the city center. And the large flat in the suburbs was rented out, and the rent was used to cover the mortgage of this house. It was from then on that he liked to praise me to others for being gentle, virtuous, thrifty, and good at managing the household. After learning that I wanted all the savings and the large flat in the suburbs, and that I required the small two-bedroom apartment in the city center to be sold immediately, and half of the selling price to be given to me as child support for our son, Aden was very devastated. Why? I've earned almost all the money in the family these years. Compared with him, my lawyer was much calmer, as the at-fault party. The man needs to make compensation when getting a divorce. Aden's shrewdness came into play. There's a difference between making compensation and leaving the house with nothing. The lawyer showed him the transfer records between him and Lily during the marriage. All the money you gave to the other party belongs to the joint property of the husband and wife. Regarding this, my client, as the spouse, can sue and recover it. Aden, we were husband and wife once. My client doesn't want to make a big fuss about it. After learning that if he didn't agree to the divorce agreement, I was going to sue Lily and demand that she return the more than 100 cows and yuan that Aden had given her, Aden reluctantly made a concession: give her the savings and the large flat. I'll live in the small two-bedroom apartment in the city center, and I'll pay the child support for our son monthly. Is that okay? Logically speaking, paying child support monthly is also a common way. Even the lawyer hinted to me that I could focus on how much child support to get each month and not insist on getting it all at once. After all, the house in the city center has great potential for appreciation, and it's not cost-effective to sell it now. But I knew too well what kind of humiliation I would suffer when asking Aden for child support every month later. You only care about money. That's why we can't get along. I have my own wife and children to support. I don't have that much money to give you. This is all I can give. Take it or leave it. I'm short of money this month. Let's talk about it next month. Child support was originally his responsibility, but gradually it seemed to become his charity to me. If one can't uphold the bottom line of marriage, they can part ways amicably. But what I can't forgive is that he also used this to trample on all my pride and backbone. It's understandable to be foolish once, but if I'm foolish again, I deserve to be treated like a sewer by others. I quickly gave the lawyer an affirmative answer. The greater the appreciation potential of the house, the more money he'll get from the division, and the more it'll hurt my heart. It's better to sell it. The lawyer was at a loss for words, and I lowered my head a bit sheepishly. I know he must be thinking that if that's the case, why don't I just ask for the house in the downtown area as well? I want to. Too. The key thing is that Aden and Lily had physical intimacy in this house, and I think it's dirty. A good employer shouldn't put their lawyer into difficult a situation. I turned around and took Aden out of my blacklist, and sent him a high-definition frontal photo of him and Lily having intense physical activity in our house. Although it's not very pleasant to look at, there's no way around it. After all, it was intercepted from the surveillance video. At the same time, I didn't forget to sincerely advise him: if you don't agree to the terms of my divorce agreement, then we'll see each other in court. I will sue Lily first, and then sue him. The judgment of the first lawsuit can also serve as strong evidence for the second lawsuit. With sufficient evidence, it's obvious whether the lawsuit can be won or not. Although if we go through a lawsuit for divorce, I may not necessarily be able to get so much property. But as the lawsuit proceeds, once there are intimacy photos, or spread as evidence, I wonder if Aden and Lily can still stay in this company, this industry, and this city. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession, I still left him half of the money from selling the house. Aden was very depressed, but in the end, he had to sign and agree. On the day of the divorce, it was appropriately drizzling. I was about to leave when Aden stopped me. Honey. He looked haggard. Believe it or not, you've always been the only one in my heart. Being with her was just a mistake. And I will definitely not marry her. I believe you. I gave him a sweet smile. After all, which man would marry a woman who cheated on her husband without any reservations? In my previous life, Aden's second wife was indeed not Lily. When I added the second half of the sentence, the light in Aden's eyes gradually dimmed. Looking at him, who seemed like a pitiful person who had been let down, I couldn't help but wonder if he would be so eager for me to come back if he hadn't lost so much. After dealing with the divorce, it's Lily's turn. In the past, whenever I saw a situation where the legal wife made things difficult for the mistress on the street while the man remained hidden throughout, I always felt disdainful. Why should women make things difficult for other women? After all, the man who can't control his desires is the real culprit. But in this game involving 3 people, I lost my marriage. Aden lost his money. And she has no reason not to pay any price. Right? After all, both she and Aden were married when they spent the night together. Since she chose to be the mistress knowing the other person was married, she has to finish the path she chose. Even if she has to crawl. Aden is a science and engineering man. And he's very practical. Otherwise, he wouldn't have remarried so quickly in his previous life. The divorce is already done. And there's no hope of getting back together. What's the use of pretending to have reformed and turned over a new leaf? The more a person feels pain and pressure, the more likely they are to have desires. The house in the downtown area was really easy to sell. And since I set a low price, it was sold in just a few days. After paying off the remaining mortgage, I still need to get half of the money from the sale. With that amount of money, it's definitely not enough to buy a new house. So if Aden wants to do anything with her again, they'll have to go to a hotel. The iPad is really a great invention. And the function of finding a phone is so useful. I originally used this iPad at home to watch TV series. After having a child, I had much less time and often didn't even turn it on. Only when my son got a bit older did I occasionally use it to let him watch cartoons. Since I've never been used to the Apple system, I've always used Aden's account to log in. I guess Aden would never have dreamed that his divorced ex-wife would accurately track his whereabouts through this function. As soon as I saw that Aden's phone location was in a hotel, I hired someone to lie in wait. In just a few days, they took quite a few photos of Aden and Lily entering and leaving the hotel room together. One day, the person I hired went into a mobile phone repair shop. Boss, please help me take a look. I accidentally deleted all the photos. There are some very important photos in there. Can they still be recovered? The boss of the repair shop looked up, and it was Lily's husband's face. I don't know if it's because she thought it was unnecessary or she felt guilty. But Lily, even felt I'm sorry, as an assistant, had very little private communication with her boss's wife. So she may have forgotten that the reason we have each other's WeChat is from a team building activity of their department a long time ago. For the convenience of communication between each car in the motorcade, I added both her and her husband at the same time. Of course, she also doesn't know that I believe in an old saying, it's better to write it down than to rely on a good memory. For everyone I've added on WeChat, I change their nicknames to remarks that can help me quickly identify them. The contact whose nickname I remarked as Lily's hus and FVI home mobile phone repair has been lying quietly in my contact list for several years. Although we've never had a conversation, at a crucial moment, it can be used. Right? Lily's husband obviously seemed used to such requests. He didn't ask any more questions and skillfully helped the customer recover the photos. Unexpectedly, the customer suddenly questioned that it seemed like one photo was missing among the recovered photos. He casually looked over, and his expression gradually froze. He quickly snatched the phone, flipped through a few photos, and asked where these photos were taken. The customer said in confusion, "It's just at the XX hotel. I didn't notice that I took photos of these people. I don't know until you mentioned it. I guess I accidentally pressed the button when I was holding the phone." looking at his livid face and clenched fists. The customer seemed to realize something. He quietly paid for the service and left carefully. This kind of pointed silence is even more embarrassing. My revenge is over. After following the TV series, The Knockout, for half a month, I actually placed an order for something similar to what Gao Qiqiang used. Surround the enemy but leave an outlet. Don't push a desperate foe too hard. What Sun Tzu use Art of War says really makes sense. Since I've already gained the practical benefits, I won't spread Aiden's privacy to the whole world. Lily has never shown off in front of me. So naturally, I won't put on the airs of a legal wife in front of her either. I just gave her a helping hand to make her and her husband be honest with each other. As for whether her husband will swallow his pride, put up with it, and continue their marriage after he finds out, or if he will get a divorce and cause a big scene, I don't care. After all, he didn't find out about this from me. But it seems that Lily's husband is also a tough guy. One day, that friend whom I had never contacted suddenly sent me several high-definition photos. On the bed with the hotel background, Aiden and Lily were shivering under the quilt like two frightened quails. I politely replied, already divorced. Don't mention me. As a magnanimous ex-wife. I even sent a fruit basket to Aiden, who was beaten and hospitalized. Although it was filled with fruits that Aiden doesn't like to eat. It's still a gesture. Right? Soon. Lily also got divorced. Judging from the fact that the affair wasn't spread, I guess Aiden and Lily must have paid a lot of money to keep it quiet. The money he got from the division is probably not even enough to buy a one-bedroom apartment now. At middle age, with his savings gone, he's really miserable. Although neither Lily's husband nor I spread the scandal about them. The gossipers are too clever. The boss and the subordinate got divorced one after another. And the subordinate also showed an attitude that she had a relationship with the boss and wanted to take the place of the wife. Any person with a bit of intelligence could guess that there was something fishy between them. The rumors have already spread throughout their company. The industry circle is just so big. In my opinion, it's just a matter of time before the rumors spread throughout the entire industry. It's a pity that Lily wants to marry Aiden. But Aiden has the idea of getting back together with his ex-wife. At this time, what better choice is there than getting back together with the ex-wife to both put an end to those amorous speculations and make Lily lose the confidence to cause trouble? Taking the opportunity of visiting our son, he repeatedly explained to me that Lily deliberately set him up when they were together, and later used this matter to threaten him, so he got deeper into the situation involuntarily. He looked like he had finally seen the light, scolding Lily for all her faults, and even saying that he might have fallen into a honey trap set by Lily and her husband. In my opinion, his current appearance is much more sincere than before. Even more ridiculous is that in the end, he used the excuse of considering the child and tried to persuade me that it's important to give the child a happy original family. I think his eyesight has probably decreased along with his intelligence. Do I look like a garbage recycling station? I smiled and refused him. You know, I haven't been to work for several years. I've just managed to get back into the workplace. And I'm really too busy to think about matters of the heart. It's good that he's entangled with Lily like this. After all, they were once lovers. It's better for them to be tied together for the rest of their lives than to go and harm others. When Aiden praised Lily for her confidence, charisma, shrewdness, and ability in bed, he may have forgotten that I was also very successful in the workplace once. If I hadn't gotten pregnant suddenly and wanted to give my child high-quality company, I wouldn't have become a full-time housewife at a young age, only showing my life value through being gentle and virtuous. I once thought that I could lose love, but I couldn't lose my dignity. Later, I realized that most of the time, dignity needs to be defended with money. If I can't get a lot of love, then I'll strive for a lot of money. With money in my pocket, a clear path under my feet, and light in my eyes. No matter whether the person I meet is a good match or not, my future will be a smooth one.